I know this is a 2020 to 2021 episode comparison, but my thought is that this year is going to be so big for SMS. You're going to be bombarded in so many different places that this is probably going to be one of the last years that you have what you're able to do with SMS. I think some things might change going into 2022. And I think that says something about where everyone should be going right now, because if you're not doing this, you're probably going to be a little bit behind.
You are listening to the Messenger Mastermind podcast, a podcast that provides actionable tactics for quickly growing e-commerce companies to profitably scale their business. The strategies shared in this podcast are implemented daily by companies generating millions of dollars in revenue each year. Our goal is to help you build long-term profitable relationships with your customers.
Q4 is the busiest time for e-commerce brands. And if there's one thing that rings true year in and year out, you have to grab shoppers' attention quickly. SMS makes it easier than ever to connect with customers through their phones. Trusted by brands like Brooklinen, Native, Fanjoy, and more, Postscript is the go-to text message marketing platform for brands on Shopify and Shopify Plus. Learn more and get started with a free 30-day trial at postscript.io. Welcome to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Horowitz, and today I'm joined by my incredible co-hosts, Mark Aruda and Ben Vendel, and we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of holiday prep. We know it's October. We know it's that time to shine, so let's get right into it. Ben, do you want to kick us off with really what is the major difference between 2020 and 2021 when you're thinking about holiday in general and where to make the most out of this season?
Yeah, sure. This has been possibly the longest year of our lives, if you build it in, maybe the longest 2 years of our lives, but so much has changed in the digital marketing landscape as it does kind of every year. So there's a lot of different things to kind of take into account, but I think one of the biggest differences between this year and last year is the amount of competition on the ad platform. Last year we had an election, so there were a lot of political ads on there that you kind of had to navigate. Everyone was getting in. E-commerce was booming at the time. Not that it isn't now, but it was, definitely booming at the time. So everyone was making their last ditch effort to get and acquire new customers. But that's kind of one of the bigger things, I think, heading into this year. And I know we have a bunch more to talk about, but that's the noticeable one going into it. Like the feeling of the landscape online has been completely different heading into this holiday season.
And one thing I just want to tack on top of that is a couple quick stats. So projections right now, over $1 trillion in U.S. total retail. First time that that's ever going to happen for the holiday season. 206 billion of that is going to be e-com. Also a top for ever, like first time ever that's going to happen. And then the crazy stat that I actually got recently was 73% of e-com is going to come from mobile. So really, really big. I think there's two sides to this. Greatest opportunity we've ever seen, but I think that's also going to bring in a lot of those big players who are also just going to have bigger budgets, more to spend, and just are starting to realize that it's more efficient to really invest heavily in their e-com experience versus playing this will they, won't they on their retail side of their business.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd like to look at it as last year, smaller brands, e-commerce brands had a massive advantage over a lot of the bigger guys that were brick and mortar based, the Targets and Walmarts and et cetera of the world, or really just any brick and mortar. They were kind of not prepared for what last year was. So being an e-commerce brand, we were ready. All of us, everybody listening to this had that advantage and we all saw it. And we're still probably seeing some of it to this point. But the difference between last year and this year is that those bigger players are not going to be caught off guard this year. The pandemic that made e-commerce great for all of those smaller brands also accelerated the rate that those bigger brands were willing to put in at the time. So now they're ready. E-commerce is fully baked into things like Walmart and Target and in-store pickup and things like that. So we're not going to have that big advantage that we had before. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be still huge for smaller brands, but you should certainly expect that things won't be quite as easy because of those big players.
Yeah, definitely. I think another big piece to think about that as well is that those big players are going to invest in, very funny to say this, but the traditional e-com channels like Facebook, like email, they're going to get very comfortable with that. And then obviously everything that's happened with all the different privacy updates and everything going on with iOS is really going to make those channels a lot more difficult to navigate. So Ben, do you want to just quickly walk us through, like, from your vantage point, how are you thinking about that? How are you thinking about, like, okay, our old reliables may not be as reliable anymore? What are the strategies and tactics that are really going to win in the next couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, a lot has changed over the last year. I feel like I'll keep saying that over and over in this episode, but the iOS changes are going to be huge on the way that digital marketers kind of reach their audience. In addition to that, there was a mass exodus just before that November on Facebook because of the election stuff. A lot of people haven't returned. Audiences seem to have changed on there. The way we can reach audiences is a lot different. So I think what we're going to do is really focus on own channels and kind of go back. We give this tip a lot, but own channels like email, SMS, everyone that you can get in touch with without having to deal with an algorithm is really kind of what we're focusing on. But Q4 is such a great opportunity to get new customers. So I think one thing that we will do on the Facebook side of things is just kind of focus all of our efforts onto our best offer. That's really kind of something that happens when the prices go up. We focus on our best offer, lead with your best foot, and just try to grab any extra people you can. They're going to be expensive, but ultimately we think they'll be worth it. People usually tend to buy more than once during the holiday season from the same company, as long as you stay in touch with them. So I think that's something that we're going to kind of focus on this year.
Yeah. One thing that we say every BFCM holiday is to start early on your lead captures, bring customers in as early as possible. I would say that that's something that is not going to change this year. If anything, that should be leaned into even more. With the always ongoing increase in prices on Facebook, Instagram ads, and really any digital advertising, this becomes more and more important. When I say start early, I mean, really, we should just be saying all year round, this needs to be a focus, because once you hit this time period, talking about the big guys in the space now in e-commerce, like, they're on e-commerce. So you're fighting them just the same as you're fighting your direct competitor. So leaning into as early as possible is definitely going to be helpful. Digging up kind of old lists from last year to see which customers maybe bought over the Black Friday time period that maybe haven't bought again since is definitely a good place to go. That is something that's not going to change from last year to this year. That's just good practice overall. And no matter how different these years may be, those are just good rule of thumb practices that you should be working through and planning for.
Yeah, and I feel like this must be our fourth holiday prep episode since we've launched the podcast. And I feel like every year we've been talking about reduce your reliance on Facebook, reduce your reliance on Facebook, reduce your reliance on Facebook. And it's very interesting to hear you all say, like, this year it's basically just like a supporting channel. I think, to me, the biggest difference in where to prepare this year, especially with just the uncertainty of email and not really knowing what's going to happen, is triple down, quadruple down, whatever X amount percentage down on your SMS list. We've seen such great growth over the past 2 years that, to me, honestly, I think SMS might even overtake email this holiday season. Like, really, in this next 6 to 8 week process, build your SMS list as aggressively as possible and really get it to be as big, because not only are you going to just have difficulty sending the same tactics and all those same things that you're relying on in email, but it's also going to be so much less competitive. And yes, it's getting a lot of adoption and more companies are doing it, but we're still at like less than 5 to 10% adoption of the companies doing it, not even the consumers on the end. So that's going to be a really big piece to me. I think you're going to get the guarantee over. It's going to be less competitive. You're going to have a quick Twitch reaction, right? People respond to SMS very, very quickly. And so that is going to be a major shift that I hope to see a lot of brands make this year, because I feel like the ones that properly invest will get to see that exponential return that will give them that good kind of momentum to propel them into the.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just a quick prediction on my part. I know this is a 2020 to 2021 episode comparison, but my thought is that this year is going to be so big for SMS. You're going to be bombarded in so many different places that this is probably going to be one of the last years that you have what you're able to do with SMS. I think some things might change going into 2022. And I think that says something about where everyone should be going right now, because if you're not doing this, you're probably going to be a little bit behind.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like that's pretty good on the owned media channel. I know we were talking before this about some shifts you all are making on the paid side because not as much budget is going into Facebook. So Ben, do you want to kind of walk us through where your head's at, where a lot of that budget is going to go this year?
Yeah, I think we've discussed this on some past episodes, how CVG is kind of in a place where we've been focusing more on the brand oriented ad side, where not so much direct to consumer, although that is still a big part of what we do, but more of like the brand of what CVG is. And a couple big channels, now that the Facebook algorithm seems a little wonky for the time being, until they get that sorted out, we're focusing on things like YouTube advertisements, which are really good for top of funnel. A lot of people on there. And this has focused us to put a big weight into video creatives. So if you have the ability to do video creatives, you can do it with an iPhone. They do amazing footage. You can find some other companies that can help you out. But top of funnel like YouTube. Another big one is connected TV, which we're excited about. We're just testing it out now. That gets you on platforms like Hulu, Sling TV, things like that, where there's a set unskippable commercial that you can run 15 seconds or 30 seconds. It's pretty cool. So those are exciting platforms for us. Other platforms are like TikTok and, things where there's a lot of video traffic. Again, all video views on that. It's all content based, but there's a lot of fresh eyes on that. You just kind of got to go where the people are using, where the people are online, where they're spending time, where they're communicating with friends. And Facebook seemed to have taken a back seat in that area at this time. But they could figure it out. But those are some of the things that we're focusing on for this year. More top of funnel traffic, getting people in the door, and then leaning heavy on own channels. Hopefully we capture them when they come in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Ben. Overall, it really just comes down to what we've been saying for years in diversification of channels. And we say that for safety of our brands, because we knew years ago, just as we are seeing now, that things like Facebook ads do not stick around forever. And we'll say the same thing for every other channel that we're dealing with now. So the more places that your hands are, the more secure you're going to be. You may often hear things like focus on one thing, and that's definitely true. You should have, your top tier, middle tier, and bottom tier. But the more places that you are, especially going into BFCM, the better off you're going to be when you're coming up against things like, iOS updates for Facebook and email, and just congestion overall of fighting against your competitors and even non-competitors that are just taking up the attention of your customers.
Yeah, definitely. And connected TV, honestly, is probably, and I think to me, YouTube is the most underinvested channel today. I think connected TV is the most interesting channel of the next, potentially even 10 years. To me, that's the next big wave. And I think now is the perfect time to start testing, because so few people have migrated over their budgets. But especially like Ben, as you were just walking through that, the situation makes perfect sense, because Facebook 5 years ago, you could show somebody an ad and in 24, 48 hours they were buying. And the magic was really there. If it was a true direct response channel, you could match that back. We were just seeing that erode to the point where today I don't see that anymore. I don't really hear brands talking about like, oh, we converted somebody off of immediately off of an ad. It's moved so much to building the relationship, nurturing it, and then eventually moving that over to a sale, that makes perfect sense. That why pay for direct response pricing when you can move to branded pricing? You can move to more video view space. And I do believe that Facebook is moving in this direction also. Like, to me, that the in-platform engagement is what's most successful there as well. But I think other channels are going to be more effective in executing that. And to me, it makes perfect sense, because if everybody's aware of it and you can have that same good mechanics where they become aware of your brand, become interested, and then you can get them into that nurturing funnel. It's the same stuff we were doing in all the other channels already, right? It's the same mechanics. And so it's really interesting to me of like who can effectively execute on that this holiday. Because I think it's not even just the fact like, okay, we want to have a big holiday 2021, but those brands are going to have to break out 2022s, because once you figure that out, that's where you can aggressively scale into that new channel where, yes, TikTok, you can probably go spend big budgets, but that's going to get competitive very quickly. To me, connected TV is that non-obvious, obvious option that is going to be that nice little gold mine for a couple of years.
Yeah, it definitely is eye opening. It's a completely different channel. Obviously, Facebook's a social engagement channel where you're asking questions. You can almost have a conversation with the customer. Whereas Direct TV, for the most part, they're on their phone when they're watching this. So you have to hit them over the head. And what I mean by that is numerous times. Targeting is less effective too. You're targeting households and not individuals. They don't specifically have to log in to watch somebody's. They could be borrowing logins to different networks as well. So a lot of different things to focus on. And I'm usually a doom and gloom guy, but I don't think Facebook is completely dead. I think the big thing is that the reporting on Facebook is so poor that decision making is getting harder and harder. You can't turn on a dime anymore. You can't. You kind of have to take a leap of faith, which is almost what you do with connected TV as well, and YouTube, or podcast advertising for that matter, is you're putting this message out there. You know it's good. There are ways to track it, but it's not head to head. It's not direct dollar to dollar return on investment. It's almost like we built this strategy. We're confident this strategy works. Let's put it out there, and then over the year you'll see a return. But it's a little different, and I understand everyone's in a different boat, that they don't have the ability to take a leap of faith or really to report to somebody who has the understanding that your plan takes time. So I understand everyone's situation is different, but that's just kind of a direction that we're heading in.
Yeah, I mean, I understand this isn't a connected TV episode here, but when I'm looking at 2020 versus 2021 and I'm trying to find the answers to the problems that we're seeing this year, I'm liking what I'm seeing in connected TV. Reason being, from our experience, is that this is something that stands out. It's extremely different. It does make your brand appear bigger than what it actually is. People believe that it is like you're buying a TV commercial, just like any other TV commercial. It's like you're buying a Super Bowl ad or something, which is interesting because it's not that. It's not quite that complicated. It's just like kind of buying a Facebook ad. But from our experience, what we're seeing is that customers, when they see that, they are jumping out of their seat for it. They're taking pictures of it with their phone and they're posting it to socials to show, like, look at this. So I know that's more of the VIP customer, but if that's the experience of a VIP customer, then the experience of someone who's newer to you is probably saying like, I saw that Facebook ad before, didn't maybe care so much, but this now is grabbing my attention because this is different than all the other things that are showing up in my news feeds.
Yeah, it's got that awesome omnipresence feel. Something else that I think is different this year that I kind of wanted to talk about is the messaging aspect of it. Last year, things have changed, not fully, but they have changed. So there will, I think, be a bigger emphasis on gifting this year. Going back just 2 years ago, it was like, don't show up empty-handed to events. You want to bring a gift to this person. That kind of went away last year. It was more like gift to yourself, or figuring out a logistical way that they can ship a gift to a friend and kind of showing it that way. So this year is a lot different. It's going to be more in-person gifting. It's going to be more, be with your loved ones, share this gift with them. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, how you guys think messaging will change going into this year.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's a similar. I feel like last year was a bit of a divergence, but I feel like it's a similar trend to what we've been seeing. Of the smart brands know, and I saw some stat recently that it's like 54% of people buy gifts for themselves during the holidays. So I think it's figuring out how you effectively execute on the, hey, these are great gifts for others, and the playing into the treat yourself, where it is going to be interesting. I mean, listen, hopefully between the time that this episode airs and actual holiday, nothing happens and everybody can continue on their plans as they have been planned. But I think that you're going to see the same continuance of, I think there's just going to be a more and more of a push around the treat yourself, buy yourself a gift piece of this, which is still very weird because I would think that spending would shift back to gifting for others. But I think while you're still going to see that be the mainstay of this time period, I think you're just going to see more share and more attention and more messaging being pushed to treat yourself, which kind of is the other interesting thing that I wanted to talk about next of like, I know we briefly touched on email and it's going to be a little bit of a weird position this year, but how are you guys thinking about just how to treat email differently, how to plan for email differently this year, just because of everything that's going on?
I think this year it probably falls down to being more aggressive. So that's not just on email, that's on SMS also because of email. But I think that's kind of where things are going to live just going forward. It's going to be more messages and more segmenting, more just kind of fighting upstream in the space in the inbox and promotion tabs and starting earlier, I guess. It's definitely going to be a learning experience for sure to see where this all goes. But email is still extremely strong, so there's no reason to be staying away from it. If anything, just leaning into it further.
Yeah, I would say putting a big emphasis on flows. Basically the triggers that people take that send them an email, because campaigns are going to be a lot different. We won't get the same open rates, and we know that flow open rates are generally higher because a person has taken an action, they understand you. But just like Jeremy touched on earlier in the episode, I think segmenting will be definitely interesting. You can go back and kind of make a list of the people that have taken advantage of your big promos throughout the year, make them a list and think or assume that, hey, they might be interested in my big Black Friday deal. In a different way, maybe you can structure the email focus more on sales than new products or some other thing. You can kind of build tendencies throughout the year now. You have a year's worth of information going back throughout your list. So think about the different offers or things that you have that are unique selling propositions on Black Friday. If it's promos, go back and take the dates of your biggest promos, who bought on that day, email them about the promos. If it's new products, who's interested in your new products, probably your biggest fanatics, email them about that. If they're cold customers and they haven't made a purchase this year, you email them and say, hey, this is the absolute best deal you're going to get all year. Let them know that and make them make the decision on if they want to shop at your store or not. And just like Mark said, it's going to be super competitive. We're going to have to be aggressive. But you also tiptoe that line of being, too aggressive or overly aggressive. So it's definitely going to be an interesting balance. Open rates are still effective for now, and we'll see how it goes between here and holiday. But things are changing, man.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's also going to be a little bit of like segment roulette. Like here's something I think Ben laid out awesome tactics and ways to think about this. A couple of staples that we always used was people who bought last holiday but haven't come back to purchase yet, and then people who bought last in 2 years ago but haven't come back to purchase yet, and include those in your lists. But I think there's something really creative. Like, what are some indications that someone would be interested in holiday shopping? Maybe that they haven't purchased in the year, whether that's content engagement, activity on the site. Like, really thinking about non-email metrics to determine what those triggers would be that, oh, this person might be interested to come back. I think also, there's probably not enough time to do this just yet, but just really think about cleaning out your email list. I think a lot of people fall into this trap of, oh, we have this massive email list of hundreds of thousands of people, but realistically only like 50 to maybe 80 or 1,000 are actually engaged and still opening emails and still monetizable. And so like really being honest with yourself around like, okay, we created all these engaging segments. Who can we actually go and target and actually go and execute? One thing I also just want to clarify, because you both just brought up the aggressiveness of email. We're not talking about the aggressiveness of sending multiple different promos a lot. It's just heavily promoting the same promo that you're already running, which is kind of what I want to dive into next. Of Beginning of October, we've got probably 7-ish weeks until a holiday actually hits us. How should we be thinking about our like, promotional calendar now? And knowing, right, like we have the whole BFCM weekend and probably even extending that earlier. What else should we be thinking about from our promotional window between now and that time period?
Yeah, I will let Mark take the bulk of this because he is the master of hype. But I think something that I've taken from him that is one of the best strategies that you can take is making sure that each email, each message is digestible. If this is your year-long plan, we know you have a lot planned for Black Friday, but think about it from somebody reading an email. What they're actually going to look at is 2 or 3 sentences. They don't care about every individual little thing. So make it in bite-sized pieces and then send them a bunch, or something like that. But just keep that in mind. People are going to be excited for your offers, but not as excited as you are about presenting them. So just keep that in mind when you're sending out emails.
Yeah, I mean, starting early is the most important thing. We say it every time. There's no difference here between that last year and this year, unless, of course, we're just even starting earlier, because we saw it last year. When we said start early, there was almost no such thing as starting too early. We were seeing people done with their holiday shopping come October. So that is probably telling in how you want to map out that calendar. You might be having a lot of your messaging stacked earlier for buying for friends and family and gifts, and then tailor towards the end of that messaging, towards the end of those weeks, closer to actually Black Friday, to be more about buying for yourself. I know we kind of already talked about that in this episode, but where people are getting their gifts so much earlier, definitely lean into that for your calendars, and don't forget the fact that people are absolutely spending a ton of money on themselves. Between last year and this year, the amount of stimuluses that have gone out, it has certainly created a economy where people are flush with cash and they are not afraid to buy, whether that's for others or themselves. So, kind of lining things up in that way, always having something for each week or every other week throughout October, November, even definitely throughout December. It's very easy once you get into December to think like Black Friday's past, you're just kind of catching up. People are already done. But that's not true. You still haven't hit Christmas yet. There's still plenty of gifts that haven't been bought for people that are maybe like, I don't want to say those second tier friends and family, but like the kind of people that aren't at the very top of the list. The easy kind of gifts, maybe the general type of gifts, whether that's gift cards and such, those should be thought of as well. Don't just taper things off once you've passed November.
Yeah, definitely. My one piece of advice here that I'm consistently seeing across the leading brands is take your exact BFCM promo, like literally what you were going to run between, even if you launch it the Wednesday before Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday, and run it worst case a week early. Preferably, even like if you can pull it up into late October, early November, like literally put the full blast, everything that you were going to do over BSM weekend and just move it up. It's going to be less competitive. It's going to be cheaper from an ads perspective. People are going to love it. And as Mark said, like a lot of people are just moving their holiday shopping up earlier and earlier and expecting the deals. And to me, it's a way that you can just have a massive jump ahead of time. And then people will always buy over BSM weekend. It's Thanksgiving weekend. If they're not working, they don't have much to do. And if they are, they know they need to go shopping because it's a long vacation. So it's a great way just to have a massive revenue spike early, still catch it. And some brands even have a bigger revenue spike on the early one than the actual one. But just having those two events will create nice little jumps in your sales graphs that will really give you a lot of cash to propel you into the new year. And then just as Mark said, like you're not done just because Cyber Monday is over. You've got last ship date on Green Monday in mid-December, and then return/Boxing Day, and then literally leading right into New Year's. And everybody will be flush with refunds and gift card cash after that Christmas window. So there's plenty of opportunity to sell into that time as well. So I know we've talked a lot about this already. Let's just wrap up with what are some things, not necessarily diving into the like nitty gritty of fulfillment, but what are just some high level things that we should be thinking of, just because, to be honest, all the carriers say that they're going to be overwhelmed. Prices went up in like July for holiday peak costs. It's just going to probably be an even worse version on the fulfillment side than 2020 was. So what are some ways that we can just get ahead of that and not ruin customer relationships, knowing that it's coming?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I'm hopeful that customers are expecting it. I think that most are. So that does help kind of ease the things that we have to educate on. The key part being that we do have to educate just the same. Giving general timelines, and I say general, not specific, because we can't control postal. We can't control shipping, but customers will certainly expect that we can. It's not their fault that something shows up late or gets lost. It's not our fault either, but they should not be the one to lose out on that. So really good practices, I would say, is maybe kind of preparing some messaging, whether that's an email or some sort of blast out to communities or followers to let them know what to expect. Thank them for being patient. Everyone is going to be dealing with the same thing, so that does play in the favor of the brand. You're probably going to have better results staying away from USPS. I know that's not always possible for everyone. DHL e-commerce has been something that seems to be better last year. I can't say if it will be as good again this year, but USPS is not doing well. They are very much known right now for not getting what they need to be able to thrive, and especially going into that holiday season. So I guess just being prepared on your end and preparing your customers. And this is not just for November or December. If it's anything like last year, which it probably will be, it absolutely could lead all the way through January.
Yeah. So something really simple, just like have an email prepared. If you didn't do it last year, definitely worth investing in this year. You could even do it as an automated fashion to create some rules in Klaviyo based on the ship times. But I would just really say, like, make sure that you have something prepared, because there's probably going to be a good amount of unhappy customers this year, just so many delays. But that being said, it's still going to be an incredible opportunity. There are so many ways to still make a lot of money in the next couple of weeks that really just like keep pushing through, keep getting inventory in and out the door as quickly as possible. And then really just take those new marketing opportunities, really level up. Because also a lot of the tactics that you build for one channel are probably pretty deployable across many. So just really figure out where you can take your budgets and invest heavily. And let's have some fun this year.
Thanks for listening to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with another e-commerce marketer. And always let us know what you think down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you're looking for cutting-edge tactics and the resources that we rely on to run our businesses, sign up for our newsletter. We'll include a link down below. As always, stay confident, connect with your customers,